we as heart surgeons are busier than ever. Heart disease remains far and away the number one killer here in the United States and worldwide. And heart disease not only isn't going away, its incidence is increasing.
For myself, my former self, and frankly, a lot of people out there, they hear what I'm eating. They're worried about cholesterol. You're going to clog your arteries. That's what I was always worried about. You got to eat low fat sort of thing. What should people really be worried about? Is there a root cause of heart disease that you can simplify?
Yeah, I think the simple root causes of heart disease are inflammation and insulin resistance. And those two are related, but, they can also occur sort of independent of each other. These are the true root causes of heart disease. What I tell people about cholesterol, about lipids, is it's not that they're irrelevant, it's just that they're downstream from those root causes. When it comes to cholesterol, I try and get people to focus on the quality of your cholesterol, not the quantity of your cholesterol. And that cholesterol quality is affected by insulin resistance and inflammation. So that is really what the root cause that I believe we should be focused on is. And the scientific literature, the studies support this. I did a talk a number of years ago for one of the low carb meetings where I went through every paper that I could find that had a comparison of the risk associated with high cholesterol and the risk associated with insulin resistance when it came to cardiovascular disease. And in every one of those papers, the magnitude of risk associated with insulin resistance was much higher than the magnitude of risk associated with increased cholesterol. I think at the crux of our problem is that we've been so focused on cholesterol that we essentially ignore the rest of the picture. And when you take care of the insulin resistance and you take care of the inflammation, the cholesterol is probably no longer an issue. So that's kind of how I think about heart disease these days and how I talk to patients about heart disease.
So if we really simplify it, it's from eating processed foods and sugar and things that we weren't intended to that causes the inflammation and insulin resistance for the most part.
Quick interruption. Beast Mode Soap sent me this soap, 100% beef tallow, free to try. This is certified grass-fed tallow, never vegan, made in the USA, natural essential oils. We got forest ash, paleo pine. We're in the pine forest. The forest ash is my favorite. I've been using it for a while now. They sent this to me for free, but I liked it so much I agreed to do a paid partnership with them because I believe people need to know what they're putting on their body. And the soap that I had at home is full of chemicals, detergents. Seriously, after I use this soap, my skin feels so soft and so incredible. What you put on your skin ends up in your bloodstream. And I only want to put good things in my body and on my body. And this, there couldn't be much better. This is 100% beef tallow. Learn more at beastmodesoap.com.
So if we really simplify it, it's from eating processed foods and sugar and things that we weren't intended to that causes the inflammation and insulin resistance for the most part.
Yeah, that's certainly a major factor. There are other lifestyle factors, things like smoking, which certainly contribute to inflammation. But the primary driver of insulin resistance certainly seems to be ultra processed food, which includes sugar and highly refined carbohydrates, and also includes processed oils, vegetable seed oils, that both independently and certainly combined can really wreak havoc on the development of insulin resistance.
If heart disease is going up because we have poor metabolic health, inflammation, insulin resistance, then prior to this, like 1800s or something, wouldn't we have had much less heart disease, heart attacks, things like that? Is there any stats or data on any of that?
Yeah, there's very good statistics on this. So, we first can go back to sort of, the leading physicians of the late 1800s, and some of them published sort of their life experience. And you see very little, if any, mention of heart disease in what they were treating. And then, we really started to track heart disease statistics here in the US, as far as I'm aware, right around 1900 is when we started to track it. And again, it was a pretty rare disease back then. And we started to see a steady incline, a steady increase in the amount of heart disease in the early 1900s. And then around the mid 1900s, shortly after World War II, 1950s, we really start to see an acceleration of this trend. Here in the US, it really came to the forefront of public awareness. 1955 is when President Eisenhower had a heart attack while in office. And, that appropriately set off the alarm bells. And that really started the question of what is causing heart disease. And unfortunately, around that same time, some choices were made about where to focus our efforts on heart disease, prevention and treatment. And we may have made some choices that, in retrospect, were misinformed. I guess is one way to say it.
A nice way to say it.
Yeah.
If you were to give my former self advice, like back in the day when I was overweight and unhealthy, congestive heart failure, irregular heartbeat, I was told to avoid fat. I was cutting fat off of my meat. I was eating low fat salad dressing, which probably had a whole bunch of seed oils in it and other unnatural items as well. What advice would you give to me or someone that's watching this right now that is concerned about fat and not necessarily concerned about their metabolic health?
Yeah, so I would give them the same advice that I ultimately gave myself about 8 years ago, which was, low carbohydrate, eliminate processed food. For me, it really starts with eat whole, real food. And I believe, the majority of that food should be animal protein, and with the fat that comes with it. We, evolved eating these foods, and we ate these foods for millions of years as human beings and didn't seem to have any issues with heart disease. And then all of a sudden, when we started to introduce more sugar, these fake oils, processed food in general, that's when we saw this heart disease epidemic taking off. Certainly, what I ended up doing to improve my health, what you ended up doing to improve your health, and so many that we've seen these days have done is, low carbohydrate, primarily animal, protein focused. Some of us, go full bore into carnivore. And, as most people watching this probably know, that's largely how I maintain my life. And that's how you maintain your life. And we've seen great results from it. And we have a ever enlarging community now that's getting similar results. And honestly, that's the same advice I give my patients these days. Low carb, whole real food, and you can eat all of the red meat, all of the animal products that you want. They are not harming your heart. They never were the problem. And it's just so unfortunate that we have all of this history around this bad advice that is so hard to overcome these days. Because when they hear from a heart surgeon that you can eat all of the red meat you want, it's certainly shocking to most people. It takes a lot to really explain why I say that, why I'm so confident saying that, and why that's what I do myself.
So, Dr. Ovadia, I like to simplify things. I heard this analogy. I wanted to run it by you to see if this is true or fair or if it's off base. It made me understand things a little bit better because I still get the cholesterol thing from people. That's the first thing they ask me, what's your cholesterol? I heard someone say this. I want to know if it's true. And what they said was, if you imagine in the United States, there were about 350,000 house fires last year. And if you look at that data, in almost every instance, firemen showed up. And so if you look at that data, you could come to the conclusion firemen cause house fires. And this analogy the person was making was saying it's kind of similar with cholesterol. If you look when someone has heart disease, you see cholesterol there. The cholesterol is getting blamed for the heart disease, but in reality, the cholesterol may be going there to heal inflammation. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, it definitely is. Cholesterol is basically the body's repair mechanism for the damage that's being done to our blood vessels. And that damage is from inflammation and insulin resistance. And the problem becomes that if you keep doing the damage, And especially if the cholesterol itself is damaged, which is one of the effects from insulin resistance, that's when we start to see this plaque buildup, this atherosclerosis that, leads to heart disease and leads to people having heart attacks. And I think that is a very fair analogy that the cholesterol is getting blamed, but it wasn't the cholesterol that started the problem. And that's why we go back to insulin resistance and inflammation, because if you take that out of the picture, no one has ever demonstrated, that cholesterol in the blood can just spontaneously start to form plaque. You have to have damage to the blood vessel first. And that is what allows this cholesterol to then start to come into the blood vessel wall and start to build up in these plaques. So if you eliminate the insulin resistance, you eliminate the inflammation, you can effectively mitigate the heart disease risk.